Welcome back to my workshop journey. Just about to cut the hole in the router table fence, and once that's done I can then really start using it for rough things. Everything needs to be attached firmly at the back first with the dust extraction, but I really want to make sure that the hole in the front is in the right position, and that way I can make sure that air will funnel into it. Several ways I can do that. I can do it on the table saw, I can do it with a router. I'm going to use a jigsaw, basically because it's just quick and simple. So let me get the jigsaw out. Now, when I first conceived this project, I was only going to be using a pair of the cutters on an arbor, and the maximum height I could get for that was 30 millimeters. So originally I'd only gone up from the base up 35 millimeters. Now I'm getting a longer arbor, so I can cut up to 50 millimeters separation between the two cutters. I'm extending that up to 65 millimeters to give me that little bit extra, but make sure that the diameter is also big enough to allow for this 60mm cutter. That's the biggest one that I've got, so I've just marked the new line and opted for the blade from Bosch that is specifically for precision cutting. So just get my ears and make the cuts. Now, the nice thing about this blade is it gives a really nice finish underneath, which is the face side, of course. So what I should have done is drilled a hole in the corner just to take the blade. I'll do that now. That's a nice piece of beech, that is. There we go. Now just cut the same sort of hole on the base. Of course, this can stop at its 35 millimeters because it doesn't need to go back any further. So, can you see? That's a lovely smooth finish, and that's the front of the fence. So that will give me plenty of clearance for the cutter and the arbor. And if I just get rid of this, That will go in there like that. So that's a nice hole for the vacuum unit. Okay, so what I've got to do now is just make sure this needs to extend a little. I had thought chop this end off, but I think what I might do is just get the corner chisel and take out that top end just to extend it a little bit, and that way I won't compromise the strength of it. The two braces in, that is perpendicular, perfect 90-degree angle. That's exactly what I wanted. The next thing is to decide where to put the dust extraction port. So let's have a look at that. Trying to think which way I'm putting these in now. That's it. Okay, so that's roughly the pipe that I'm going to be using. So I could put it on the top, I could put it on the side, or I could put it on the back. Not quite decided, but what I'm going to be doing is using a hole saw on the pillar drill, so that will give me a nice clean finish anyway. So that's the next decision to make. I've opted for the top of the dust extraction port as the best place to put things. Now what I am going to be doing is, that's the piece of tubing, the 62-63mm that I'm going to be using. The closest hole saw I have is the 64mm. That's fine. I'm going to, on the inside, use one of these connector pieces. That will go on to the pipe, hold it in place, and then I'll be able to attach another one of those on the outside to hold everything together. So set the saw up. I've got a little dimple here, which is where the centre of the drill will go, and that's roughly in the middle of the top. Use a scrap piece of wood underneath. And one hole. That goes through nicely. That will go on there, and another of these connectors on the outside, and that will hold the pipe very firmly, and then I can put another pipe into the equivalent of that on the outside for when I need it. And there's the finished product. A small piece of 63mm piping with a straight connector on one side to lock that into place, and the 90-degree bend to take it away from the table. That will be fine. That will go into the dust extraction port nicely, and all I've got to do now is drill the 2 holes to hold everything to the bench, and then I can start gluing up. Right, I've drilled 2 holes. I opted for a 9mm drill because these are 8mm bolts, and did that on the pillar drill. That's centered on the table nicely. That will allow me to move everything very securely, but most importantly, if I can remember where I put the nuts, there we go. That will lock everything down very securely. Good. So that's as far as I'm going today. Thanks for watching, and next time it will be starting to fit everything. And before I forget, that's where the dust extraction will fit nicely. So all's looking good. We're cracking on nicely. After my last comment yesterday about where I was at with the router fence, I did realise that I have actually 2 more things to do before I glue it all up, and that's to work out and cut where the T-tracks are going to go. So where are they going to go? That's the front. I'm wanting 2 T-tracks, one 19mm, and that's going to go along the front, and then there's going to be an 8mm that's going to go along the top, and that top one is so that I can run stops to stop work going one way or the other. So the 19mm T-track, it's for the set of featherboards that I have. Now what I want is to position this where it will work the best, obviously, and you can see from that if I'm going to be doing a thin piece of work, then it needs to be that far down. That will go right up there for when it's not needed, but it does actually need to be down here somewhere. So, pencil, and the inside of the track needs to be about there. That's fine. Okay. Now, I did order 2 lengths of 19mm T-Track. I ordered these from Rutland's Tools, and that will make them identical to the ones that are already here. Now these come in 1 metre lengths. If I can get them out of the packet. There we go. And my marking for the internal dimension is here, so the T-Track needs to go outside there and there. Now this will make it 32mm, I think. Let me just double check with the calipers. 32mm, yes. That means it's going to have to be a dual pass on the router, and because it's going to go down $12.5mm, I'm really going to have to do that in several passes. But the largest straight cutter that I have is 25mm, so working from this direction I'll be cutting that side first and then reversing everything and coming back this direction. And I will be working on the fence that attaches to the router itself. So let's get set up. Right, we're all set up. The fence is attached, the 25mm cutter is installed. The 2 marks that I've made are here, and with this first pass I'm only going down about 7-8mm, and I'm going to be working to this left hand side from the way I'm looking at it, the right hand side from the way you're looking at it, and cut that. Then I will lower the cutter, make the second pass to take it down to 13mm, and then reverse the work and come back the other way. Right, ears on. Dust extraction is hopefully going to work. Now that's posing a problem, because the cutter was going underneath, so you might be able to see it's going way off track here. So I'm going to have to devise some other way of working, aren't I? Because that just is not going to work. That is going straight underneath there. So what to do next? What I could do is take that off. How am I going to do this? Because that should stop up like that. That should not move. Lock that temporarily. That should not go under there. So, let's try again. Well, that was touch and go at times. I had to be very careful that this fence didn't work itself underneath the bottom of the fence, but a little bit of movement, but that will come out with the second deeper pass. Okay, let's reset and take it down to its full depth. And it's attracted some plastic. That was clever. Okay, let's just make certain that is only going down 13 millimeters. That's 13.5, so that's a little too deep. Okay. Right, another go. That hasn't gone down at all. Okay, I will get the hang of this. Let's try again. And by George, I think we've got it. That has now given me a depth of 13 millimeters. Let me just clear this track out. Right, that's a nice good cut now. A little bit of a wobble here, as you remember, but that's as deep as I need it. And this is where a little tip I came across on Stumpy Nubbs YouTube channel. Thank you to the team over there in America. Always work from left to right with the router, because then the cutter will be pulled into the work, which is why I could almost operate this router one-handed as I was guiding the piece. And that's why I'm going to need to now turn the piece around so that I'm still working left to right, and that way it will pull into this side of the work. Okay, let's set that one up. And at least I've now got this good edge that will mean I won't have to worry about this fence. Lock that in place, move the fence and lock that in place. Make the cut 6 millimeters. Where am I? I'm going to make it about 7 or 8 millimeters. And I'm going to work from this end on this side of the piece. Okay, here we go. Right, that's the first pass. Let me just check the width, and that is going in very nicely. So at least the width is correct. Okay, now just take the depth all the way down to the bottom. The guide doesn't need altering. Okay. That is a good, clean, even cut, and that goes in. It is actually a little bit proud, so I will have to take that down maybe 1/2 millimetre. Okay, that's fine, but the width is correct, so I don't need to worry about that. There, that is now nice and flush. That's a comfortable fit. Good. So all I will need to do is trim that to length, and we're ready to fit that. Right, the top T-Track, 8 millimeters. Now that means the ultimate width is 19 millimeters, and I had thought I had a full 1 meter length. Obviously I don't. That's all I have left. That's fine, because all I will need is to cut the whole length of the piece, and then I can reposition it should I need to. But what I'm going to be doing is working off the front of the fence, setting this flush, and that way it won't impede anything coming along the front, but I will be able to work clamping it in. So as I said, pencil, this is a 19 millimeter total width, so I'm going to be using a 20 mil cutter. That will take the whole width and a little bit of overhang as well. I should be able to take that in one pass, because I'm only going down to 13 and a half millimeters, and then we can start positioning things. So the rough position, it's not too bad actually. That's almost where I want it. Now one of the advantages of this fence is I have a fine adjuster. And that's it, then I can just lock that off. make sure everything is clear. Make sure I have my ears. But of course I need to go down to 13 millimeters, don't I? So get some light on the subject. That's down to the work surface. That's nil. So take that back up. $12.5 according to that. Lock that off. And just make sure that is 12. In fact, what I might do, yes, I just wanted to double check. So I did miscut a little bit. It's not quite on the edge, it's a little inset, but that's fine. But that's nice and flush with the top, and that means I can, if I need to, reposition that. Good. This is the T-Track then, the 19mm. I've marked the length from the fence, so all I'm going to do now is cut that down with the angle grinder, but because this is metal I'm just going to put some gloves on. I know this is only aluminium, I say only aluminium, it can still do some damage. And just smooth the edges off. There we go. And one T-Track measured to length. But what I'm going to do now, the little offcut, I'm just going to mark where on these 8mm tracks I need to cut out so that the bar can travel the whole way across. In fact, if I'm just going to move that to there, do I? No, I will cut 3 pieces, I think. Leave that where it is and cut 3 pieces. Yeah, I'll be fine. So take these 2 tracks up so I can make the cut that little bit easier. And here's the result. I've just cut out these 2 little sections of the 8mm track that go here. That's the little bit of offcut from the 19mm, and that's just to test what I've done. So the whole idea is so that this T-bar can travel all the way along. Now that goes through there very nicely. Move that along. Fit that into place. And that goes through that left-hand one very nicely as well. Okay, so I can screw those 8mm tracks back into place and then cut the 19mm. And here we are, 3 new pieces of T-Track. I haven't screwed them in yet. I'm just going to test the alignment. And out of the 1 metre piece of T-Track, that's all I've got left. But so this might pose a small difficulty. That one needs moving slightly. That's positioned properly. Okay, so all I need to do now is stick the screw in there, and then everything else works. Good. Right, day 3 of this little mini series, and if you remember, we've just cut the T-Track slots, one for the top, one for the middle. I was going to immediately start gluing up at this point, but I've realised I was thinking that the slot cutters that I'm going to be using to cut the tenons, I thought those were the biggest cutters that I'd got, which is why I made that hole 75mm to allow for the 60mm cutter, thinking that was the biggest one that I'd got. I've remembered, no, this is the biggest one I have. This is a panel raising cutter that I'm going to be using for the big project in a few weeks' time, and it actually has another bit of the cutter that goes on the top, but that's the basic panel raiser, and you'll notice that is quite a bit bigger than the existing slot, so it's going to be easier if I cut that little bit out now before I start gluing up, and that way I'll be able to glue up and won't need to disturb anything else. Now, not only does that part of the slot need cutting, but the rear of it does as well, because where are we? This diameter is 45mm. Where the panel raising will go will need about 40 millimeters to the back. So I'm just going to make sure that that is actually big enough as well. Otherwise everything will get messed up. So that distance there is 45 millimeters. I could do it. I think I might give myself another 5 millimeters on the base. So if I cut out another 5 millimeters on there, and that won't need the full height, but it will need taking out the total length of that is 85. If I take that to 90 millimeters, so I need another 10 millimeters either side of that just to make sure that it clears. But I only need something like that, a little corner out like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, and then we can come to gluing up. I thought I'd just show you here the cutter that I've got. So I've fitted it into the router because what I need to do is make sure that I'm cutting the fence correctly. So there's the cutter, there's the fence against the cutter, and so I need to make sure I'm going to be cutting high enough, but only taking off exactly what I need, because really I don't want this hole any bigger than I need to have it. So that is as high as the cutter will ever go, because it is actually just above the table base. So it won't go any higher, because otherwise I'll be leaving an edge underneath the cutter, and that's something I don't want to do. But that's as high as it will ever be, and so really I'm only taking off something like that, and no more than that. And that is 15 millimeters high and 10 millimeters wide. So I'm just taking off that little corner on both sides. That's that. On the base, I've opted for an extra 10 millimeters all round. So that's what I'm going to be cutting now, and I'll see you the other side. I've made the cut, and you won't have to see it from the camera position, but that's the centre point of the cutter, and so that's where I put this edge of the base. That's far forward of where it will actually be, but that now clears all round on the base. If I put the fence in place, like that, that is the actual face of the fence is much more forward of where it would normally be, but that clears all round as well. That's what I wanted, and so the fence now has all of its bits in place, and I'll be able to start gluing up. So the gluing up process on the baseboard is going to be in several stages, I think. I'm going to leave the two braces out at the moment just so that I can concentrate on clamping up the dust extraction unit. Now everything fits nicely. I know where things are going to go. It's just a case of next process. I think what I'm going to do is drill through all of these so that I can then screw up into the other components. That will just give everything that little bit extra solidity as I glue and then hold everything in place. So let me get the drill. Now I'm going to be using these. I've just got these off the shelf. These are 20mm, 4mm, 20mm screws. They are actually going to be longer than that, but I am going to use the 4mm gauge. Now, one little handy gauge that I've had for years from the Woodworking magazine, the wood screw gauge. It just gives me the gauge of the screw, clearance size, pilot hole size, and for the 4mm the pilot hole is 3mm, which is that one there. So that's the drill that I'm going to be using. I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes in there, and then we can start gluing up. So scrap piece of wood underneath there so it doesn't break out, and roughly in the middle. There we go. And what I will do, I think, now, before I do anything else for gluing up, I'm just going to countersink those. Before I have anything to impede me. There we go. Good. Now we can get on with gluing. So make sure I've got the right pieces in the right holes. And the right way up, of course. Now that's the theory, and this is the tightest piece, but no matter. I know where everything's going. Everything is square. That's the main thing. Right, use a slightly bigger brush than I normally do because there is more to glue up. Make sure there's plenty in the joint. There we go. So that one's in firmly. Okay, I did forget to do that little bit. I must say this is one of the biggest projects I've ever undertaken before I even start the major project that this is all in aid of. So that's clamp that, two bigger clamps there, so that's the back of the dust extraction, gluing to the two sides. Those are in very firmly into the two slots. That's fine. The top will go like that, and I'll need a couple of, or at least one larger clamp. And you'll notice all of the scrabbling around that I've got. That's really what this workshop journey is all about. Me trying to find better ways to do things. I have a lot of sorting out of the shed to do, just so that I can work better. Okay, that's that. The top is a firm fit in there. Like that. That will glue and clamp. Like that. There we go. And that is forcing everything together. That's nice and tight. That's nice and tight. Okay, that is just a little bit of tidying up with the glue running out at the back there, but we can leave that until next time, and then we'll glue everything to the face. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.